Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah everybody for coming to our Family Line program. Inshallah, today we have Mufti Wasim, who has traveled here from Dallas, Texas to be with us. Before this, he was in Umrah, and then he was in Egypt, and he just got to LA this morning. So, Jazakallah khairan, Ya Sheikh, for joining us. Inshallah, the program will start. We'll go for about 45 minutes, and then we'll keep 15 minutes for a Q&A at the end. So hold your questions till the end, inshallah.
Amma ba'd. I studied in South Africa, and many of my teachers in South Africa, they had migrated from India, Pakistan. And someone asked me today about my teachers. They said, the person who taught you. I said, Alhamdulillah, the list of my teachers is more than 50. From the beginning of my education till now is more than 50 scholars that have taught me. And some were more influential and really shaped my mentality, my philosophy. And one of those teachers, his name was Sheikh Suleiman Choksi. Incredible individual. As a student, he could not afford a pen. So for the 10 years of his education, he memorized everything. Incredible, incredible. I was with Mufti Mink a while back, and when I met my teacher, Maulana Choksi, because Mufti Mink's father, I met Mufti Mink's father as well. He's also a scholar, 88 years old, very senior scholar. He graduated in, if I recall correctly, 1960. Graduated in 1960. He was born in 46, I think. I met him in Medina Munawwara. So when I told Maulana Choksi that I had met Mufti Mink, Maulana Choksi recounted a story of how they were both, I believe, in Emirates or something, and Mufti Mink was in business class or first class, and he saw Maulana Choksi in the back, immediately got up and brought Maulana Choksi to his seat. Maulana Choksi is senior. The teachers that I studied by were all very old. They were not very young. Two of them have passed away, Allah yarhamhum. One passed away this year, one passed away a few years ago. Anyhow, why do I say this whole story? These teachers, when they initially came, they came by themselves. Their families remained back at home, their wives and their children. And South Africa is known for its crime. Anyone over here been to South Africa? No? You should travel. Traveling is in the nature of insan. وَهَلْ مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. Allah says in the Quran that every person will cross over Jahannam and see Jahannam, even if they won't go inside it, because the mind is inquisitive. I've heard so much about it. I want to see the horror movie. I don't want to be in the horror movie. Our kids, we always have these kid events, and they have jinn stories. They want to hear the jinn stories. They don't want to be the jinn story. So South Africa is known for its crime. Someone said that they built a machine that catches thieves. So the first day they were testing it, they put it in England. And in the first month, it caught 5,000 thieves. So then they said, okay, let's trial it again. So then they took that machine and they placed it in Pakistan. And the first month, 10,000 thieves were caught. Then they piloted it in South Africa. They put the machine in South Africa. The first day they put it, the second day they went back, someone stole the machine. So crime is very high in South Africa. They have barbed wires, and that's a story on its own. So when people go for vacation, they have usually someone stay at their house so that the lights are on. It intimidates the thieves and discourages them from going inside the house. So one of the scholars, Maulana Yaqub, told my teacher, Maulana Choksi, he said, look, I'm going for a few weeks, come in my house, you stay over here. It deters the thieves. He said, okay. So he showed him around the house. This is the light switches, this is the fridge, this is the security alarm, and this is how the doors lock, and this is the garage, and this is this. And he had a fish tank. And he goes and he says, and this is the fish tank, and this is the food of the fish. Maulana Choksi said, I came from India, from Gujarat. In my life, I've never seen people have fish inside their house. This was a new phenomenon for me. He said, anyway, the sheikh, that person left. Maulana Choksi, as he was told, at this time, he turned off these lights and turned on those lights and turned the security alarm on and locked the doors and checked the garage. And he took some food to the fish and he dropped a little bit inside. And the fish ate it. He said, well, they ate it really quickly. So he said, let me give it a little more. So he dropped a little more. One of Maulana Choksi's most unique, I studied tafsir, fiqh, and hadith from him. One of his most unique qualities was that he had a very strong grasp of the Quran. I remember being in something like what you would call Whole Foods, and he could just look at the different fruits and quote different Quranic verses and give you an iman boost in the vegetable aisle. That was his grasp on Quran. So he said, I saw they were hungry, so I sprinkled a little more, and quickly they gobbled it up. And so I said, okay, so I dropped the whole thing inside. I said, they'll eat what they want to eat, when they're done. He said, and I went to sleep. Next morning, I turned off the alarm, I checked the doors, I looked at the fish, all of them were dead. He said, I got worried. I called another friend of mine. I said, what happened? He came, and he said, what did you do? He said, nothing. The fish were hungry. He said, and I fed them? He said, how much did you feed them? He said, I dropped the whole thing inside. He said, Maulana, chutki dalna tha. He said, you were only supposed to put a pinch inside. And then my teacher said, then I recalled the verse from the Quran, وَلَوْ فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابًا مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ لَبَغَوْا فِي الْأَرْضِ. That if Allah says, if I gave you unlimited supply, you would rebel against Allah. وَلَكِنْ بِقَدَرٍ. Allah gives you little by little, so that you don't rebel and forget who you are. How many of these celebrities, they get fame, they get wealth, they get recognition. You are in the land of celebrities. You are in the land of Hollywood. You're in the entertainment industry. You are breathing the same air as them. The flashiness of this and the roads and the Star Walk. How many of them, despite all of this, drug addiction over there, suicide over there, depression over here, pill overdose over there. How is this happening? Major stars in their careers. What is going on? Because when the supply gets opened and it comes unlimited, then insan, like that goldfish, does not know how to react, and it becomes the end of them. But it is part of this life that Allah gives and Allah takes. تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ. Allah gives to whom He wills, and He takes from whom He wills. تُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ. Gives honor to whom He wills, takes from whom He wills. بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرِ. And there's khayr. Khayr is in Allah's hands. I get a question asked almost too frequently. If Allah is just, Why is there so much suffering? Why is there so much poverty? And there are people who lose their faith on this one element. Has so many of your children and youngsters, the sign of a future of the masjid is the youth of the masjid. And I served in many capacities in my life. I know my brother Shabir for almost a decade now. In the days he knew me, I didn't serve the youth. I served community. But then a chapter came in my life where I specialized in youth. And it isn't enough to just bring them inside the masjid. That's not enough. The masjid, this ayah is over here. Powerful ayah. إِنَّمَا يَعْمُرُ مَسَاجِدَ اللَّهِ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ. What is the purpose of the masjid? There's a goal and there's a philosophy of the masjid. And it energizes. The goal is not just to do a youth program, kids come and kids go. The goal is not just to have a Saturday school and a Sunday school, they come and they go. That doesn't preserve Iman. I'm a person who's traveled over 24 countries. I have seen, how you have this balcony on top. Now, whether the architects thought of this or not, but this is actually an Ottoman design. I was in Bosnia earlier, and Islam existed in Bosnia for almost half a century. And you'll find masjids scattered everywhere. I've prayed in a masjid that was the building was 1,000 years old. The masjid was 500 years old. And you'll go into the masajid, and every masjid, the women's section is like this. Why? Because they can see the speaker can't see them. The speaker looks up, the whole ummah is looking at them. Hey, where are you looking? Right? The philosophy behind the ruhani and the spirituality. And what is the biggest poison for our generation? Problems. And not being able to deal with problems. Why are they happening? Why is it happening to me? So the first thing I respond and I say is very simple. وَبِهِمْ عَرَفْنَا فَضْلَهُ فَبِضِدِّهَا تَتَبَيَّنِ الْأَشْيَاءُ. Mutanabbi, great poet. He was such a good poet, he claimed to be a prophet. Then later on, he recanted from it. That's why they call him Mutanabbi. Tanabba means the one who claimed to be a prophet. But he did tawbah after. He says we learn things from opposites. You can't understand cold if there's no such thing as heat. You don't understand what is darkness if you've never seen light. If all you saw was darkness, 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 you would never know that there is a concept of light. If there wasn't death, you wouldn't understand life. And if there wasn't life, you wouldn't know what death was. And if there wasn't pain, you would not know what happiness is. So the existence of opposites is a necessity. The second thing, this is not the end of the story. This is the beginning of the story. You're just on one chapter in your life. And Allah doesn't take from you because He hates you. He takes and tests from the ones He loves the most. My Nabi alayhi salatu wassalam, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. What was his legacy? Great-grandfather Hashim got married in Medina Munawwara, at that time known Yathrib. He was in business in Gaza, his wife was expecting, Hashim passed away. No one knows she gives birth to a child. That child is born with white hair. So they call him Shayba. Anyone speak Arabic over here? Raise your hand if you speak Arabic, so then I understand my crowd a little bit. Good. Where are you from, brother? Libya? Sudan and Egypt. MashaAllah. Which part of Egypt? Cairo. I just came from Qahira. I gave a lot of bakshish. My God. Bakshish upon bakshish upon bakshish. I asked, I said, why do I have to give it to them? I said, they didn't do anything. I said, no, it's the culture, you have to appreciate them. I said, for what? They should appreciate me, I'm the guest. Ajib. The boy is born. His uncle comes, finds out that there's a boy. Hashim had a kid, goes over there, negotiates with his mom to bring Shayba to Mecca to reclaim the position of his father, and Shayba doesn't want to go. You ever take your children to the masjid or to a party or a dawat and they don't want to go? You know how their face looks like? In Urdu we call that jalawamu, like a burnt face. You look at their face and it looks like adab is on there, and you're trying to crack the jokes because your friends are in front of you. Like, how are you? Oh, he's so good. And the kid's just like, the face, the mood, you took his phone away, he's grounded, and now you're struggling, you're trying to hold on to your izzah, and you're eyeing your kid. Shayba didn't want to go. And Shayba he didn't want to leave Yathrib. And he had the most angry face. That when he was being brought into Makkah, they thought Shayba was a runaway slave of Muttalib, and therefore they started calling him Abdul Muttalib, the slave of Muttalib. Otherwise, Muttalib was his uncle. Okay. Abdul Muttalib says, okay, he's having son after son after son. He says, if I have 10 sons, the 10th son I am going to sacrifice for the gods. Lo and behold, the 10th son is born. And who's the 10th son? What's his name? Abdullah. But there's a twist. Abdullah's not born alone. He's born with a twin sister. They were not the only twins. Hashim also had a twin. Hashim's twin was Abdul Shams, who became the progenitor of Banu Umayyah. Abdul Shams had a son named Umayyah, who had a son named Harb, who had a son named Abu Sufyan, who had a son named Muawiyah. Hashim and Abdul Shams were conjoined twins. His foot was connected to his forehead. And Hashim's father, Abd Manaf, separated the kids with a sword. And one of the fortune tellers said, now bloodshed will happen between these two, their two lineages. I don't mean to digress, but I want to build the emotion so you understand where I'm coming from. Abdullah gets saved. The story you all know. Abdullah goes to Medina. Abdul Muttalib brings him there to get married. He goes to the house of Wahab, and with him is Wahab. And Abdullah sees Amina. He likes her, wants to marry her. Amina's cousin, Amna bint Wahab, is there too. And Abdul Muttalib, the father, likes her. The family get happy. And Abdullah and Abdul Muttalib get married same day, same time, in the same household. That is why Hamza radiallahu anhu and the Prophet ﷺ were close in age, because the marriages happened at the same time. Now, brings her to Makkah Mukarramah, and the scholars differ when Abdullah passes away. Beginning, right when he was born. Bottom line is, Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam entered this dunya without the shade of a father. Allah began taking things away from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam before he even entered the dunya. Poverty, no wealth. They want to send the child, you want to send your children to private schools, because the public schools, hey, everybody's naughty there. So they would send them to the Bedouins, like a private school. Halima Sa'adiyah comes. Nobody wants to take Muhammad Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He wasn't rejected after he proclaimed Shahada. He was being rejected as an infant. People are turning him away. Halima Sa'adiyah comes at that time to this child. She looks, and she's also very poor. She's coming with hope. And she enters and she sees the kids, and everyone's kids are taken away. And she's about to go back, and she feels, and she's got a camel, very old. And she feels that we came this far, let's not go back empty-handed. So she says, let's take this boy. They take the boy. They sit in the back of the carriage. The camel is not moving. They're trying, wondering what's going on now. So in the bustling of it, they pass the kid to the front. As soon as they pass the kid to the front, the camel starts going very fast. Halima Sa'diya's husband asks, he says, Kya sawari badal gayi? Has the ride changed? She said, Nahi, sawar badal gaya. She said, no, the rider changed. It's a different person now. She goes and she keeps him in his care, and she looks after him. Any good you do, وَمَا تَفْعَلُوا مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَعْلَمُهُ اللَّهُ. Allah knows about it. Don't ever think good is wasted. And don't ever think bad does not come back to you. So she goes, looks after him, returns him. Now let's fast forward through the life of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I haven't even begun my talk yet. I'm just making you grasp the seerah and the emotions as we talk. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's father Abdullah had, as I mentioned, 10 brothers. One of their names was Harith. What was his name? Harith. Harith had a kid named, anyone know? Huh? That was Haritha, and that was the adopted kid of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Harith had a kid named Abu Sufyan. Not the Abu Sufyan you are thinking about. That is Abu Sufyan, the son of Harb, the son of Umayyah, the son of Abd al-Shams, the conjoined twin of Hashim. That's a different Abu Sufyan, who leads in the battle of Uhud, whose caravan was about to get looted for the battle of Badr, whose daughter was married to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Habiba, whose wife Hinda chewed out the liver and gutted the eyes of Hamza radiallahu anhu. That's a different Abu Sufyan. This other Abu Sufyan is the cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Harith, Abu Sufyan ibn Harith. And he's married to Jumana. Anyone know who Jumana is? The daughter of Abu Talib. Abu Talib has 4 sons and a daughter. Talib, Aqil, Ja'far, and Ali radiallahu anhu. 3 accept Islam. Talib does not accept Islam. Neither Talib does, neither Abu Talib does. All right? This is going to come in handy later on. So remember all these points. I'm not just sitting here saying things. This is going to come in handy later on. وَكُنَّا كَنَدْمَا جَذِيمَةَ حِقْبَةٍ. Abu Sufyan ibn Harith and the Prophet ﷺ were boys. Hey, they were close. They grew up together. We know our childhood friends, right? Right? Our childhood friends. Oh, they're the ones that we love. They're the ones that we adore. We have nostalgic moments with them. We have trust with them. We have loyalty with them. 40 years of friendship. And in these 40 years, what is happening? At the age of 6, Amina says, let's go see your father's grave. They go to Medina. Abdullah passed away in Medina. There's a long story for that. I don't have the time. They go to Medina, Amina, Abdul Muttalib, and their slave girls, Baraka, Ayman, if I recall. They go to Medina, visit the grave. On the way back, in Abwa, middle of nowhere, the Prophet ﷺ's mother breathes her last in front of the very eyes and the arms of Rasulullah ﷺ. Gone, father, mother gone. At the age of 10-ish, grandfather passes away. You see the losses happening? One home to another home to another home. You're talking about I was in Umrah a few years ago, and this one woman, she teaches in New York, and she said that in the projects and in the problematic areas, they actually do surveys of the kids, of how many kids come from broken homes, have been to different foster homes, orphans, low income, because they use that to project how big the prison should be, because these are the ones that are most probably going to turn out to criminals. And she said, if you were to look at the Prophet ﷺ by every worldly metric, you would have checked it off that this man would have been a failure. Moving forward, he gets married to Khadija radiallahu anha, and he has a son from her, Qasim. And Qasim, 2 years, 3 years. This is not a boy that just passes away out of the womb. No, you build a bond with this kid. Passes away right before Nabuwah. Then, Abdullah. Nabuwah comes. Few years later, Abdullah passes away. His second son. As ibn Wa'il. As ibn Wa'il is the person that tells the Prophet ﷺ that you are abatar. You're, meaning tail cut off, meaning you have no lineage that's going to continue. Inna a'tainaka al-kawthar fasalli li rabbika wanhar inna shaniyaka huwa al-abatar. This was revealed because of As ibn Wa'il, tormented the Prophet. Man, when a person is down, to kick them when they're down, that is begharat. That is just indecent. Even your enemy, when they're down on the floor at their lowest, you don't come there and you rub it in. And As ibn Wa'il did that. No man forgets that. Who's As ibn Wa'il's son? Anyone know? Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who conquered Egypt and Palestine and is buried in Fustat. And his son Abdullah bin Amr bin al-As, Jalil al-Qadr Sahabi. I mean, imagine the heart of looking at the very people whose fathers did this to you. We see someone does something to us, we take it on their children, their lineage, and everyone. Abu Jahl there tormented the Prophet ﷺ. Ikramah here, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Umayyah ibn Khalf tormented Habib alayhi salatu wasalam. His son Safwan, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Abu Sufyan and Hinda, Wahshi, gutted and ripped open the heart of Hamza bin Abdul Muttalib. What did they become? Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Hi. What is Allah doing here? Man's going through multiple losses. The people inflicting it are becoming radiallahu ta'ala anhu wa radu an. They're becoming the greatest of people. Time progresses. And I'm going to fast forward a little bit now. The Prophet ﷺ has how many kids? Anyone know? How many kids does he have? Total. We should know this. We should know this. 7 kids. 4 daughters, 3 boys. 2 from Khadija, Ibrahim from Maria Qibtiyya, Zainab, Kulthum, Ruqayya, Zainab, Ruqayya, Kulthum, and Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha. Out of 7 children, 6 he buried in his own lifetime. Buried his wife Khadija, and Abu Talib passed away, according to some mu'arrikhin, in the same week, 3 days apart. I mean, you're talking about pain. And this man doesn't lose sight of his mission. There is no day off. We're talking about pain and how to deal and confront pain. Losing 6 out of 7 children, the sweetheart, the love of your life, رُزِقْتُ حُبَّهَا. Hamza is gone. Ja'far is murdered. Radiallahu anhuma. Mus'ab ibn Umair. Zayd ibn Haritha. These were pieces of the Prophet ﷺ's heart. Zayd ibn Haritha is gifted to him at his wedding by Khadija radiallahu anha. And I'm going to divest a little bit, because this story, we got to hear it. One of the most difficult things we experience in life is divorce. Either you experience it or your children. It rocks people's lives. They feel alone, embarrassed, ashamed. And then we start the blame game. Rasulullah ﷺ had his adopted son Zayd ibn Haritha. And he was called Zayd, the son of Muhammad. Right? And that's an honor that no pubescent man ever possessed. Allah told the Prophet ﷺ, from now on, if it's not your biological child, someone cannot claim that person to be their biological father. So put yourself in Zayd's shoe. You've been calling someone Baba, Baba, Abu, and being known as someone's son your entire life. Your father came, finally discovered you, was taking you back, and you said, no, I want to be with this man. I'm okay as slave. You gave up everything. Only to now be told you can't use that name anymore. We lose a job. We lose a post. We lose some relationship. Now this man is losing the connection to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But the fruit of sabr. You see, we have a lot to learn from nature. Nature is a master of patience. And with time, it heals and it sprouts its fruits. You can look at something today and say, this is nothing. But nature will take that time by the will of Allah. And in time, that thing will become a beautiful orchard. There's a lot to learn from what Allah has created around us. Because when Allah takes and you have patience, then Allah gives like you can't imagine. All right, let's continue. Heartbroken. Put yourself in there. Imagine you were the son of Muhammad and now you're told, you can't say that anymore. Now to further prove that point, the Prophet ﷺ wants Zayd to get married. So he has a cousin, Zainab bint Jahash. And she is Qurayshi, Banu Hashim, high blood. Zayd is also an Arab, but because he had the branding of a slave, it kind of affected his social status. Arguably, this is one of the best matches that mankind has witnessed. The matchmaker, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The boy, adopted child of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The girl, cousin of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are one of the best matches ever made in mankind. These are amazing people. They get married. And then what happens? They don't get along. She doesn't like him. It ends in a divorce. Pain up, look at Zayd's heart. Pain upon pain upon pain. And the Prophet ﷺ experiencing it with Zayd. Because you don't have a son, someone's like a son to you. And now you're told you can't call them your son. You did their marriage, you thought the best for them to give them happiness, and it ends. There's a lot of emotions to unpack here. Then Allah reveals in the Quran. And He says, I'm debating which part to say first. I'll bring this one later on. Allah tells in the Quran that now further to prove the point that Zayd is not your biological child, you have to marry Zainab bint Jahash. Okay? Guess who is the person sending the Prophet ﷺ's proposal? Zayd radiallahu anhu. It's unfathomable for you and I. You got divorced, now your sheikh is marrying the girl you got divorced to, and you have to take the proposal. Goes to the house of Zainab bint Jahash, knocks on the door. Man yaqra'ul bab? Who's at my door? Zayd. It's Zayd. What are you doing here? Our relationship is done. And he says, Zainab, hani'an laki. Hey, you are such a blessed girl. You're a blessed woman. For I have brought the proposal of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to you. Let's unpack more. What did Allah do? He disconnected the name of Zayd from who? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But what does sabr teach us? He had the patience and tawakkul in Allah. What did Allah give him in return? What could be better than this? How do you get something better than this? There is only one Sahabi in the galaxy of Sahaba that is mentioned by name, and that is Zayd. Allah disconnected his name from Muhammad and connected it with himself. When Allah gives, that's how he gives. Trust his plan. وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. Don't be sad. Don't break your heart. أَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You're going to be victorious at the end. Allah's on your side. This Zayd then gets butchered in the Battle of Mu'tah. The Prophet ﷺ is watching it in 4K in Medina. When he finds out Zayd is killed, he walks out of the masjid and literally falls to the ground. That's how difficult it is to express this message. 5 to 10 minutes, I'm going to wrap it up, inshallah. There was so much more that was coming in my mind, but some other time, inshallah. He goes, and now the Prophet ﷺ, 21 years fighting the people of Makkah, oppressed by them, he comes back as a victorious conqueror. Amnesty for all, except a few. Abu Sufyan ibn Haritha comes to the Prophet ﷺ to talk to him. And remember, this man was saying poems against the Prophet ﷺ, attacking him, fighting against him. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't want to look at him. Tu idhar udhar ki na baat kar. Tu idhar udhar ki na baat kar. Mujhe ye bata qafla kyun luta. Mujhe rehzanon se gila nahi. Teri rehbari ka sawal hai. Don't tell me about other people. I want to know why you did what you did. The Prophet ﷺ doesn't want to look at him. He goes to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Doesn't want to look at him. Umar radiallahu anhu. Idhab ya adu Allah. Enemy of Allah, get out of my face. Goes to Abbas radiallahu anhu. Abbas says, hey, I can't do anything. Goes to his brother-in-law Ali bin Abi Talib. Talk to the Prophet ﷺ for me. He says, I can't. He said, you really messed up, man. Salama comes and says, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Really? You've forgiven the entirety of Makkah, and you're not going to let this go for Abu Sufyan? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, not him. He was different. He mattered to me. He was my friend. We grew up together. He betrayed me. जब तीर लगा था तो इतना दर्द ना हुआ गालिब, जख्म का एहसास तब हुआ जब कमान देखी अपनों के हाथ में. The poet says, I got shot with an arrow, didn't hurt as much, turned around, saw the bow in my own friend's hands, that killed me. Abu Sufyan ibn Haritha says, if Muhammad doesn't forgive me, I'm going to take my kid, go in the wilderness, and we're going to die out of hunger. Prophet ﷺ says, tell him, I don't care. See how things shifting, right? Walked into Makkah, head held high. Makkah was under the shade of 10,000 swords. I don't have the time to go into more and more details. Read the seerah, read the seerah. Then, by Ta'if, they hear that 20,000 troops have been amassed to do what? To eliminate the Prophet ﷺ from Banu Thaqif. And this is known as the Battle of Hawazin. We're the people who were 313 and we wrecked them at Badr. Bro, we fought the Battle of the Trench. We just walked into Makkah victorious. 10,000, now we're 12,000. Oh, we're going to eat them alive. But Allah humbles people. After every victory, there's a defeat. And after every defeat, there's a victory. Inna ma'al usri yusra. They all pitched up on the tops of the mountain, Sahaba behind the Prophet ﷺ, and they rained down arrows. And the Sahaba were caught off guard. And everyone began running away and taking cover. The Prophet ﷺ was left with only about a dozen Sahaba out of 12,000 Sahaba. They just conquered Makkah. Just did it. And look how Allah's this is the nature of life. You don't win all the time. And the Prophet ﷺ had a brother, foster brother named Ayman, Ayman's son. And he passes away shaheed in front of the eyes of Rasulullah ﷺ. Taken away. And there's one warrior fighting valiantly, defending the honor of the Prophet ﷺ and the life of Rasulullah ﷺ. When the battle quelled down and the other Sahaba reinforcements came back, the Prophet ﷺ said, who is this? And the man removes his helmet. And Abbas, and he goes and he grabs the feet of the Prophet ﷺ and he kisses it. And Abbas says, Ya Rasulullah, this is your cousin Abu Sufyan ibn al-Harith. Nabi alayhi salam says, this is my brother. And the Prophet of Allah forgives him. I'm not done yet. They captured and enslaved about 6,000 of the Hawazin. And they took a lot of spoils. I'm going to fast track a little bit. The Prophet ﷺ distributes the slaves. And when he distributes the slaves, a person comes to him afterwards. The people of Banu Thaqif, they come. They said, Muhammad, remember who he lost? Ayman, his brother, right? Okay. Look how Allah takes and gives. He says, Muhammad, if there was any other king and his family members got enslaved, they would free them. And they wouldn't hold those people captives. And you're more honorable than any king. Rasulullah says, okay. And then a Sahabi comes and says, Ya Rasulullah, one of the captives, before I say this, they said, Ya Rasulullah, one of our captives is a relative of yours. He said, who is it? They said, Halima Sa'diyah. The one 60 years ago did ihsan, and now because of what she did, her tribe begins to get freed. And that's when she accepts Islam. The Prophet ﷺ sees her again towards the end of his life. And then they say, Ya Rasulullah, there's another girl. She says she knows you. Prophet ﷺ says, bring her in. She says, Ya Rasulullah, I am your foster sister, Shima. Prophet ﷺ said, it's been 60 years. 55. The Prophet ﷺ he passed away at the age of 60. How old was he when he passed away? 60. How old was he? I said 60. How old was he? 60. After all of this lecture, if you're still doubting me and questioning, 63 lunar years, 60 solar years. 60 solar years, 63 lunar years. Half the people say, I'm reaching 63, the age of Nabuwa. No, you reached that already 3 years ago. It's lunar and solar. People don't notice this difference. So about 55 years prior, this is happening. The Prophet ﷺ says, are you really my sister? She says, I have evidence. And the Prophet ﷺ says, what's your evidence? She reveals a part, and there are marks of teeth. She says, this is where you bit me when we were kids. And the family becomes freed. Lost Ayman, got Shima. Lost something, got Halima. One, lost again. This is the nature of life. And I conclude with this. In any loss of yours, tell yourself 3 things. Number 1, this isn't the final chapter. The story isn't ended yet. The story ends in the hereafter. This dunya is darul imtihan. And the hereafter is the place to enjoy. We're not made to enjoy over here. Number 2, if Allah takes one thing away from you, don't focus on the one thing taken away. Focus on the innumerable things you still have in life that money can't buy. Man told Hassan al-Basri rahmatullah alayh, why did Allah do this to me? I have no money. He said, oh yeah? He said, your arm, let me buy it from you for 50,000. He said, are you crazy? He said, 100,000. He said, are you insane? He said, $250,000. He said, impossible. He said, $500,000. He said, I'm not selling it. He said, you're sitting with over 2-3 mil on you right now and saying you have nothing? Focus on what you have, because you can't count enough of it. And you will go through difficulties. And say, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. And lastly, in any difficulty, what is the dua we make? What do we say? Powerful dua. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Indeed, we are for Allah, and to Him we will go back. What does this mean? He gave it to us. He can take it back, and we're going to go see Him again. And we're going to get it back. Number 2, Allah takes things away, because if He didn't, we'd never bow down to Him more than we needed to. Inna lillah. Allah, the real thing is, as long as you're there with us, then we have it all. And if we don't have you, we have nothing. And I conclude with this, my dear brothers and sisters. Life is between 2 emotions, sabr and shukr. All of life is 2 emotions, sabr and shukr. Master both of them, and fusta wa rabbil Kaaba, and you've accomplished and succeeded in life. Jazakallah khair. Sorry I went too much over time. We'll give 5-10 minutes for a Q&A if anyone has any questions.
I think they want you to keep going, Sheikh.
Huh?
I think they want.
Next time, inshallah. I'll say one, if there's no question, I'll say one last story of Urwa bin Zubair, and I'll end it off at that. But any questions? We'll take 1, 2 questions. On this topic or any topic, doesn't really have to be this specific topic. Going once, going twice.
Questions?
No? No questions? One last story.
At least more minutes.
Zubair ibn al-Awwam radiallahu anhu was married to Asma bint Abi Bakr. They had a kid named Urwa bin Zubair. He was a tabi'i. He was a nephew of Aisha radiallahu anha, great scholar of hadith. Medina had 7 fuqaha, 7 muftis, and he was one of the 7 muftis of Medina. A great scholar. Naturally, they would call him to the courts to get advice from him. So Walid bin Abdul Malik requested his presence in Damascus. So Urwa bin Zubair went with his children, one of his children, and he arrived in Damascus. When he arrived there, he brought his favorite son, Muhammad, with him. In the stable, the horse kicks the kid, and the kid dies. Now, it's painful to lose your kid far away, because you can't visit the grave all the time. And he's a Madani. Between living next to the Prophet ﷺ and his son, it's a no-brainer. So when he is going to bury his kid in the grave, something wounds his foot, and his foot develops a disease. And the doctors come and say, unfortunately, we need to amputate your foot. Lost the kid, and now you have to lose the foot. They said to him, it's gonna be painful. So we advise you to take some alcohol as an anesthetic so that we can amputate the foot. And he says, Jazakallah khair, that won't be necessary. They said, no, you're going to feel a lot of pain if we don't. It will be unbearable. And you're looking at your foot. They're like, this shouldn't be done. He says, the point is that I'm not aware when you're doing the surgery. Is that the point? They said, yes. He said, great. He went, did wudu. He said, while I'm praying salah, go ahead, take it out, because I'll be in such a conversation that I won't even know you guys are around me. So now he starts praying salah. He finishes, and he turns to them. He says, why didn't you guys do the surgery? And they hand him his foot. And then he says lines of poetry. لَعَمْرُكَ مَا أَهْوَيْتَ كَفِّي لِرِيبَةٍ وَلَا حَمَلَتْنِي نَحْوَ فَاحِشَةٍ رِجْلِي وَلَا قَادَنِي سَمْعِي وَلَا بَصَرِي إِلَيْهَا وَلَا دَلَّنِي رَأْيِي وَلَا عَقْلِي إِلَيْهَا وَاللَّهِ إِنِّي لَأَعْلَمُ لَمْ تُصِبْنِي مُصِيبَةٌ فِي الدَّهْرِ إِلَّا أَصَابَتْ فَتًى مِّن قَبْلِي. He says, he holds his foot in his hand and he says, I swear to God, I can go with honor and dignity and say, you have never stepped in the direction of sin. And I know, I swear to God, I know that any problem I have in life, wallahi inni a'lamu, or wallahi inna haqqan lam tusibni musibatun من الدهر إلا أصابت فتى من قبلي. There's no problem that you have that someone before you didn't already have it or has it even worse. Then he goes, buries his foot, and then he says, لقد لقينا في سفرنا هذا نصبا. He said, hey, this was a tiring trip. Then he says, اللهم إنك أعطيتني 7 أولاد فأخذت واحدا وأبقيت 6. اللهم لك كما أثنيت على ما أخذت والحمد لله على ما أبقيت. اللهم أعطيتني 4 أعضاء فأخذت واحدا وأبقيت 3. ولله الحمد على ما أخذت ولله الحمد على ما أبقيت. He said, my Allah, I am so grateful. You gave me 7 kids, took 1 and still kept 6 with me. Ya Allah, you gave me 4 limbs. You took 1 and still kept 3 with me. He said, Allah, I am grateful to you. وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ رَبُّ الْعَالَمِينَ. You can't control the outcome. What is destined will happen, whether you are happy or not. Might as well be happy. Might as well be content with the decree of Allah, because you can shout and cry and be angry, it's not going to change anything. You'll lose in the dunya and in the akhirah. Be patient and be grateful, and I promise you, Allah will shower upon you like you can never imagine. Jazakallah khair, my dear brothers and sisters. Sorry for taking so much time. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun ala al-mursaleen. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Jazakallah khairan ya Sheikh for being with us and enlightening us as always. Inshallah, may Allah bring you back to us and have you visit us again, inshallah. Jazakallah for everybody that think we'll have dinner downstairs, inshallah.